etc., etc. That's a long story.
So, I told my audience today that we're going to be discussing some things. You're my expert on Israel, since you wrote the book on Israel, which is Israel, the American Catastrophe by Stash. And you can also find this here at Radio Cafe. If you're interested in the book, just please email me, and I will be handing out the book, and I'll get a couple copies if you need sent to me, and I'll get the book to you. So Israel has been quite busy. And as you see that we have the border immigration in the U.S. terrorizing U.S. citizens in the streets. But lately we have heard that Trump may have the IDF training border immigration and also maybe be embedded in with the immigration officers. Why would you think that that the IDF would be training our immigration officers, and why do you think that would be going on?
Basically, the army, Israeli army, so-called defense forces, have been controlling the government. The government is, and the army is one thing. They have an incredible amount of money, billions to spend on propaganda, which they spread all over the world. I just read a piece in the New Yorker about the governor of Pennsylvania, his name is Shapiro. And in a very good article, he's quoted as saying he gets his information from the Israeli government, which is amazing. He doesn't get information from any other source. And I'm sure Governor Shapiro is not an idiot, but that's how it goes in the United States. I was living in North America the second time for 18 years. I worked for newspapers in Quebec, in Montreal, Ottawa. I was a stringer for Time magazine, Toronto Telegram, etc., etc. And for 18 years, I never read one negative word about Israel in the U.S. and Canadian press. I'm sure there were a few, but of course, I never came across one single article negative. Only when I came back to Europe in the 80s, I read an article, a long one, in the New Yorker, read for 3 weeks, by David Grossman, totally unknown Israeli at the time, who wrote how they treat the Palestinians. It was a shock to me. I could not believe that I was so bloody stupid. And then I started thinking about this whole problem, looking into it. And so I've been living with it since that article in February 1988, and my book came out in 2016 after 13 years of work and lots of research and a long time in Israel and occupied territories, which of course they don't call occupied. And that's,
anymore, right?
Yeah. Anyway.
So, do you think this push to take over Greenland has Israeli footprints on that?
Basically, Israel and Trump are working hand in hand to divert the attention of the world, which the Junior Bush, who was a total idiot, called the civilized world. So they try to divert the attention from Putin, from Ukraine, and from Gaza. Trump, as you remember, was quoted, he was running for the president the second time, that he was the end of the Ukraine war in one day. Now it's months and months later, he of course hasn't done anything. And he's a friend of Putin's, basically. Putin has photographs of him in bed with various ladies in Moscow, etc., which I don't blame him. He was then a businessman. The Soviets treated potential collaborators, potential friends, and rich people treated them with. They had special care. They had special rooms in the best hotels. They're reserved for the people who might one day be blackmailed or helped the Soviet Union in one way or another. So these rooms all had cameras for the last few decades. So I'm not blaming Trump for having a fantastic girlfriend in Moscow, but when he was going there on business, he never expected to be a president of the United States. And when he ran for the president, he did it as a gimmick. He did it because of publicity.
Because Barack Obama made fun of him during the press conference.
And he just lied from the very beginning. I don't understand how the people of America can accept such a liar, apart from everything else. I mean, he was lying for years before he became president that Obama was not born in the USA. And this kind of lies went on and on. The New York Times, which is a fairly good newspaper, which also manipulates the news from Israel, but it's another story. They stopped counting how many when he reached maybe 3,000 lies. They stopped counting the lies
of Trump.
Of Trump.
Yeah.
Exactly. So basically, what I call the Bush, Trump is basically the director of an orchestra. It's a genocide orchestra, whose members are Israelis and many other people who are supporting Israel or are too scared to say anything. Because in many countries you cannot become a successful politician or successful anybody practically, especially in the United States and Canada, if you are not a vocal supporter of Israel.
Right.
The Israelis, as I say in my book, have destroyed hundreds of professionals, politicians, scientists, university professors, because they refuse to.
So, do you think what's going on? Sorry to cut you off. Do you think? Okay, so recently Trump is asking people, like he's creating a board for Gaza, and he's asking people to join the board for $1 billion.
That's sick. Basically, for Trump, the first thing is money and self-publicity. Okay. That's it. He behaves like a spoiled child. He asks the world, or asks the Norwegians or the Swedes to give him a Nobel Prize. No child has ever been so stupid and so arrogant and so ridiculous as to say something like that. He is a completely crazy, derailed personality.
So, also, but how does the Israeli government? We have like a senator, a young lady that is on Congress now. She's moving to be a senator, and she's a Democrat, and her name is Jasmine Crockett. And recently, she just approved $3.3 billion to Israel. And there's other Democrats in our Congress and our Senate that approve this money, knowing that the left is not okay with this genocide.
Right.
How does Israel get into the heads of these congressmen to say yes? Okay, we're going to send them $3 billion, but at all this time they were thinking that they were on our side and against Israel, but then still sign a bill and say, yeah, here's more money.
Basically, the United States have given to Israel several $1 billion a year for decades, but it's all surrounded with a lot of lying, because in the New York Times, for example, they kept quoting for 40 years that they were getting $3 billion. It's not true. Each year they were getting more. And if you're an American citizen and you give money to Israel, it's like giving to the Red Cross. It's tax deductible, which is absolutely giving money to people who murder people, who murder civilians, etc.
How about giving the Americans' tax dollars to Israel? It's not like their money, really. It's our money that we work on.
It's your money.
Right.
It's your money. But because the anti-Israeli, by the way, the biggest lie ever told, really, for 50 or 60 years, they identify the Israeli propaganda, the lobby identify the Jews of the world with Israel. So you never heard, nobody who listens to me, who has never seen, I bet, an expression anti-Israeli. It's always anti-Semitic. So if you don't like Netanyahu, if you don't like 1,000-pound or 5,000-pound bombs thrown on civilian population in Gaza, if you're against that, that means you are anti-Semitic, which is absolutely absurd. And has been accepted, this expression, anti-Semitism, has been accepted by the world for decades. It's a very sick situation.
Now it's now anti-Zionist, or anti-Zionist, right?
Exactly. There is anti-Zionism pops up the expression quite often, but anti-Israelism never. It's amazing.
So, also, you think it's inevitable for any Democrat? We all know that the Republicans they love the AIPAC. They love AIPAC. Republicans love taking AIPAC money, it's like Ben Shapiro. Republicans don't talk. Lindsey Graham, Ben Shapiro, those Republicans like that, they love AIPAC. But now that, how does AIPAC? So these Democrats, they have to submit. These Democrats always have to submit to Israel in order to get a gain or put inside the high sets of politics.
Exactly. If a candidate, any candidate for any office, any fairly serious office in the United States, is neutral about Israel, he will not get any money from the lobby and from whatever. But if he's against vocally or even mildly, he's dead, politically dead.
Oh, wow.
There was a very famous government businessman, he's in my book, who was head, fantastic businessman, who became the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And big job, big serious job.
Yeah.
But one day he said that the U.S. should have a more balanced policy in the context of Israel. That was too much for the AIPAC, and they destroyed him. They stopped giving any money and gave millions and millions to his opponent, who was a totally unknown person. And of course, this particular senator was dead, and one never heard of him again.
We've been hearing lately a lot of, along with let's say the Epstein files that recently. Do you believe? Have you ever heard of Epstein?
No.
You think he worked for Mossad?
Oh, I'm sure he was.
Mossad agent?
I'm sure he didn't need to be on salary, of course, but practically every well-known Jew in America, except for some who are exceptional.
Barack at his home and everything else.
Yeah, but they're all basically working with Mossad and with Israel.
Is America doomed with Israel now? Like, is there any way that we can cut that umbilical cord from them? Never.
America has a big problem. It's not only Israeli lobby. Basically, in my book, I love the United States. I make it clear in my book, but I feel sorry for the people in the United States who have been taken for a ride by many lobbies. One of the main one, perhaps the most destructive one, is the Israeli lobby. The second one is the arms lobby, which wants America to go to war as often as possible, as far as possible. Then there's the medical lobby, the pharmaceutical lobby, legal lobby representing the powers of the lawyers. Or every lawyer practically on Capitol Hill, every representative and senator is a lawyer, which is illogical because lawyers in America have a very bad reputation.
Yes.
They are practically detested. there are so many jokes about lawyers that I will not mention them. However, but
we call them sharks. Some of them are sharks.
Can you imagine a country where the most disrespected profession controls the government, controls the country? That is absolutely crazy. You cannot become you might become because dog catchers in Tennessee it's a political position. So I think that maybe you can become a dog catcher in Tennessee without the support of Israeli lobby. Otherwise, your candidacy is dead.
Wow. On Greenland, why do you think? I was curious. You have this Trump wanting to buy Greenland. You got the Swiss Army over there. You got the French going over there.
I don't know about the Swiss Army, but perhaps okay.
French, British. You have a lot of the EU military heading over to Greenland. Why is it that? Why haven't Poland? Why didn't Poland send troops to? What do you think Poland has sent?
Poland is also part controlled to some extent. I will not tell you who in the Polish government works for the lobby and who's still connected with the government works for, because I respect the guy I mentioned.
Yes. Right.
But
for the audience to give them an idea of that,
I don't want you to lose your job because he might be replaced by somebody with much worse. But tentacles of the lobby are everywhere in the world, including at the top of our government. Our foreign minister doesn't dare to call genocide in Gaza genocide because he knows what can happen to him if he sends something.
Even
like
here in Poland.
Absolutely.
Why do you think Poland will commit troops to Greenland? Let's say, because we know Article 5 NATO, right? But
we have a problem here because we have a president who's in love with Trump, so that's a problem.
I told you guys. I told you guys.
I don't know the politics whether the prime minister or the president or both have to decide to send troops, so I can't answer that question. But I wish they would, obviously.
Tusk last night spoke for the EU, but we think the same thing. The relationship with Trump and the president here I don't think we will see Polish troops going into to protect Greenland, unfortunately, because we're all part of NATO.
Obviously, that protects, but it's a good political move to show that we are on the right side, that we don't support that cretin, the destructive monster whose name is Donald Trump. And how many Americans think the way I do, people who work very close with Trump, but they don't say it because they are city patriots. Sorry, but they are not. They do it for themselves.
Right.
They are representing their own interests, not the interests of the American people. I am not American, but I'm loving America, and I do everything to support the Americans in my own way, always.
Also, so now with Palestine, right? They stated, you think in Tel Aviv, they are protesting against Bibi, right? But why isn't the people so strong enough to remove him from office?
Because the right wing in Israel, basically the Israeli people have been, from babies, for decades, have been brainwashed from childhood. They are told by the parents, by the schools, that Palestinians are terrorists, that even children should be killed with impunity, because these children will become terrorists.
We're seeing protests. Thousands of people are flooding the streets of Tel Aviv.
Exactly.
But why isn't that making a move? Why isn't that making a move?
But they don't protest against genocide. 80% or more or less of Israelis support the genocide. And of course, they don't call it genocide, but they support it. Or otherwise, they are silent. And 80%, perhaps, hopefully less, are in the world. Jews are also supported, which I think is extremely immoral. Immoral is a very soft word. It's absolutely, disgraceful. Any word if you support genocide or you silent on genocide, you are really a bad person.
Lately, recently in the news, came about where a lot of these Israelis now, there's a place in Ukraine where it's a big, they have a big Jewish community there. Now, do you think that that some of them will will get tired of what's going on in Palestine and then just transfer themselves to Ukraine now?
I don't know about this community, but I support 100%. I support the Ukrainians against Putin, but the only thing I object to is that the government of Ukraine supports Israel. I think that is sick. I will continue supporting the people of Ukraine, but I'm really disappointed that, of course, Zelensky is Jewish, but that should not affect his policy. And when you talk with the suicide, you cannot sit on the fence.
Do you think, like, just to give Americans an idea, or I just want to hear your opinion. Would you think us put the world trying to push the Jewish settlers more into hey, why don't you guys go into Ukraine and just, you guys have Jewish ties in Ukraine, why don't you guys go there? Why wouldn't they go?
Well, that's a long story.
Is it just because it's the Holy Land?
Various leaders have been supporting or creating a move to get all the Jews to move to Palestine. And America has been supporting this all the
there were some.
Of course, my Kampf was written in about 1920. That he came to power, so to speak. But that's irrelevant. Anyway,
did you hear anything when in that time that they were he felt like he was being already threatened by the Jews and the Zionist state was being created?
Basically, the Jews were very strong after World War I.
They were
very strong in Germany because they were more resourceful, they were harder working, and there were many rich Jews who unfortunately flaunted, is that the word, their wealth. And that annoyed the Germans, but that's just minor things, perhaps.
Okay.
But there would have been no Holocaust without World War I. That was the result of World War I and Hitler, etc. There would be no Hitler without World War I. There would be no Holocaust. But the Gaza has nothing to do with war. It's just pure genocide that has been planned
since World War
for 100 years. No, from the very there's a book here.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
Yeah. Let me see this.
Yeah. This is written by a Jewish writer.
Okay.
In Polish translation.
No, right here. No, it's okay. I got you right.
Okay. So it's called Laboratorium Palestine. This is how the
Laboratorium Palestine. If you want to go, here's the cover.
It's by Anthony Lowenstein.
Anthony Lowenstein.
So you can definitely get the American edition or the British edition, and he writes how they try out, the Israeli army tries out its new weapons, very often supplied by the United States. They try out these weapons on the Palestinian population, and then they boast about the success of these weapons, selling these weapons to various dictators in third world countries, and not only so. It's amazing. This is not a propaganda. This is a very well-known anti-Lowenstein, a very known Jewish journalist who lived for years in Israel and who was born in Australia. So, and that's essential reading if you wish to. There's maybe 6 or 7 books you have to read to know what's really going on. I met Israeli in my club restaurant recently, and so he was obviously, we didn't agree, but we had a decent conversation, and I asked him what book he had read recently about the problems Israeli. He didn't read one book, not one book, but he was he knew better than I, and I've read 100 books and thousands of articles on Israel. But he knows better.
You mentioned one thing that stuck out because recently there was a journalist that just went to upstate New York, and there's a town called something Kiss Me Joy in upstate New York. Now this is a whole town of 40,000 Hasidic Jews. Hasidic Jews. Right. Now none of them are working. A journalist went there. There's families of they have 7 to 8 to 9 kids using their American tax dollars. They're all on welfare.
Right.
They're all taking snaps, property taxes, and they're all exchanging money with them themselves, but taking advantage of the U.S. Benefit packages. Is this something that's common with because it's common because we know they have to study and they don't
there
work.
Are many cases like that where U.S. supports all kinds of completely outrageous, racist organizations. Just, as I said, many American, for example, I think the basic problem in America is lack of good education, because education is highly expensive. Three of my children finished, 2 architects became architects in Poland. One did cognitive science, whatever that is. Now he's doing philosophy. So altogether, we studied about 15 years at Polish universities, good universities. I didn't have to pay a cent. So how come American citizens, Americans, young people, have to pay through the noses, through the ears, what you can call it, for education? This is sick. This is the root of the problem. If people are uneducated and are earning less than they think they deserve, they start looking for a savior, and they find demagogues like Trump and vote for him. So,
also with these Israelis or these Hasidic Jews that are in America and taking over these towns, it just seems like sort of the same kind of ideas of what happened here in 44. Some of the Israelis or Jews, the Hasidic Jews came back wanting to claim area that was Polish area, from what I heard. And then, some of the Poles were like, hey, this is ours. This is
all kind of nasty situations that happened at the end of the war in Poland.
Okay.
And I don't blame anybody, basically, because people lost their homes, lost their families, and most people in Poland had very poor education. They're not like Israelis, who have been to some of the best universities and academies in the world. They were ignorant people, and probably after the war, about 100 Jews were killed in various incidents, unpleasant incidents. But in all this, the Israeli and the Jewish propaganda around the world for decades claimed that Poland is anti-Semitic, etc. Well, there were pogroms. It was all the work of the mobs, illiterate mobs, and that was not in Poland. Poland was not independent.
But with these people, with the Hasidic Jews alone, in different communities around the world, we know that they just rather study and read the Torah, but also not contribute to some of these places.
Yes, but that's another story. So that's another story. That's definitely true. But this is something that's on the margin of this whole thing that happens now. It's marginal.
It's marginal.
It's not nothing.
It's marginal, guys.
Genocide.
Right.
And genocide has, like the Armenian genocide, came at the end of World War I, when Turkey was lost, because Turkey sided with Germany and Austria in World War I. Turkey lost the war, became extremely poor, and in this context there were this horrible genocide of the Armenian people. That it didn't came from Russia, it came from the economic problems. Major starvation in Turkey at the end of World War I.
Well,
so, okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we see a lot of that history. You have any predictions for the end of for any predictions that you've written in your book that are coming to fruition now, and did you see anything as far as other predictions that you have going on?
I am not very good at predicting, but I can say, although my book is strongly anti-Israeli, when it was first published, 2016, I couldn't imagine that it would, the greed of land greed. They've been stealing Palestinian lands every day every day for 75 years, murdering their owners. And I didn't think that it would lead to outright genocide. I just didn't think it's possible, but it's happening. Hundreds and hundreds of people, Israeli, Palestinian children, women were destroyed by the biggest army, the